This segment of the news is brought to you by Sun Oil Limited.
Welcome back. Amendments to the Company Act and Securities Industry Act clears the first hurdle to becoming law. House members agreed on the two, the latter of which seeks to correct existing legislative gaps, clarify ambiguities, and update the structure of the Securities Commission.
This piece of legislation seeks to rectify the deficiencies of the current legislation and modernize securities laws to comply with international standards relating to anti-money laundering and countering of the financing of terrorism, as well as to ensure that minority interests are adequately protected as espoused by the World Bank's ease of doing business standards.
According to Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Peter Turnquest, amendments to the Companies Act address similar issues. The proposed amendments, he said, will support the growth of equity capital market by providing enhanced protection for minority investors.
These particular amendments round out the legislative updates required to ensure that the jurisdiction's regime for the maintenance, availability, and accessibility to beneficial ownership information is robust and comprehensive. These amendments put the jurisdiction in a position of meeting the international standards and best practices for the maintenance and accessibility of beneficial ownership information for domestic companies, as provisions already exist for the maintenance and accessibility to beneficial ownership information of international business communities.
But while the opposition supports the amendments, its deputy Chester Cooper argued that there should have been wider and broader consultation on the bill.
We will not unnecessarily withhold support, as we do not object generally to the general themes and principles of the bill, Mr. Speaker. We do note, though, that the amendments seem in large part rushed and in some cases will not lead in practical terms to ease of doing business.
However, in his wrap-up, the Deputy Prime Minister assured that the government had sought consultation. Meantime, officials have stumbled across a problem processing permanent residency, citizenship, and immigration applications. You see, as Immigration Minister Brent Simonet tells it, many of the documents have not been submitted incomplete, for that then creates a lag in the system.
So you take the Immigration Commission, for instance, that does children born in the Bahamas apply between 18 and under the constitutional entitlement. We've caught up to the last, I think we're down to 400 backlog. But there are thousands we are still looking for persons to get their documents in. So we can only process as fast as persons are bringing the documents in. I say that by aside for those that are listening, that you feel you have documents that are outstanding, please call the people at Immigration and make sure you have your documents and we will process you.
The Commission has approved 205 names to be taken to Cabinet.
The bill here is clearly, as is defined in the Commercial Enterprise Bill, the definition of in-house professionals is meant to be a person who's rendering professional or advisory service to a specified company, a local company here, and the intent is not to take away competition, not to be in competition or take away work from Bahamians.
Minister Simonet was at the time leading off debate on amendments to the Immigration Act, which in part gives foreign business execs a chairman, director, CEO, COO, consultant, manager, or shareholder the leeway to meet a company here in the Bahamas, yet under specified guidelines.
The officer at the airport will see your stamps in your passport. At that point, he says to you, work permit is necessary. So when this is abused, it will be in your passport, because everyone apart from us, and hopefully you all use the automatic system, has to have a stamp in their passport that comes in here that's not a Bahamian.
Now, officials anticipate there may be those seeking to manipulate the system, so here's how they propose to get around that.
The bill here is clearly, as is defined in the Commercial Enterprise Bill, the definition of in-house professionals is meant to be a person who's rendering professional or advisory service to a specified company, a local company here, And the intent is not to take away competition, not to be in competition or take away work from Bahamians.
Meantime, the consequences of abuse will be noted in the system.
The officer at the airport will see your stamps in your passport. At that point, he says to you, work permit is necessary. So when this is abused, it will be in your passport, because everyone apart from us, and hopefully you all use the automatic system, has to have a stamp in their passport that comes in here that's not a Bahamian.
The International Monetary Fund has called for it in its concluding statement of this year's Article 5 mission. It determined that the prospective accession to the World Trade Organization presents an opportunity for a comprehensive review of the local tax regime with a view to achieving what it deems a more equitable and less distortionary tax system. Further, that to strengthen transparency and inform future policies, a quantitative review of the existing tax and other investment incentives is recommended. But Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Peter Turnquest assures that the government has no intention of implementing a new tax system at this time.
The fact of the matter is that global economy is changing. Everything's becoming more digital. You have this new phenomenon, or not, well, relatively new phenomenon about this shared economy with the Ubers and the Airbnbs and those kind of platforms. Even when you talk about software, Microsoft or Office or Word, you don't buy the software anymore. You actually use it offline on the cloud or whatever. That raises some very tricky issues about taxation. You know, how do you tax that? Who is due to tax? Is it taxed here, or is it taxed at the user end, or is it taxed at the source end? What does that mean to countries in terms of their tax base? So there's a lot of technical issues that are on the horizon.
But does this also translate in there being no further increase in value-added tax?
I can say with 100% assurance there will be no increase in value-added tax. As George Bush says, read my lips. But I mean it.
Introduced in 2015 at 7.5%, VAT was bumped up 60% last July to 12%. That wraps up this segment of the news. Now a check on sports.
This segment of the news has been brought to you by Sun Oil Limited.